Welcome into another edition of On the Record. My name is Jesse Friedman, as always, and today we are joined by Noah Hiles of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, who does a great job covering the Pittsburgh Pirates over there. And of course, we have the Diamondbacks and the Pirates playing their first series of the season this weekend at Chase Field. And Noah, this is a pretty big series. It feels like Pirates and Diamondbacks separated by just a half a game in the standings, and trade deadline obviously just a few days away here. First of all, I guess we have to talk trade deadline. What's your sense of kind of what the Pirates are thinking here with 4 days to go?
I wish I really had a good idea. I mean, it seems like they have been poking around at a lot of ideas, but have kind of been waiting for other people to make the first move just to see what the value is in this market. I think we have a better idea now that Arozarena has been dealt as to the going price for outfielders, especially outfielders with, years of control. We know the going rate for bullpen arms because the Diamondbacks just got one. So I think the market's kind of showing itself a little bit more. You have a better idea of what things are going to cost, who's looking to really move and what other teams are looking to do. So now I would expect the Pirates to go for, at the very least, a rental outfielder. Their outfield has been pretty bad this year, especially offensively, excluding Brian Reynolds, who's had a very good year in left field. If you look, they've got little to no production from center field offensively at all. And right field has been pretty bad as well. So they definitely need at least one outfield bat. I think they would like to find a guy with multiple years of control. I don't know if they'd be willing to pay a big package for any of those guys available at this year's deadline. A guy like Jazz would make sense if they could get him at an affordable rate because, how good is Jazz Chisholm? I don't really know if anyone's able to answer that question. So outfield is definitely the priority. And then behind that, I would say maybe a left-handed reliever. Overall, pitching is pretty good for the Pirates, both starting and bullpen. They've got a lot of depth. They've had a lot of young guys come on in both of those areas and prove to be worthy, but you can never have enough of it. And I think an additional left-hander for maybe like the seventh inning could help them. But I think outfield is the main target here, and they've got to add offense. They're one of the worst hitting teams in baseball, and the outfield is a big reason for that. So they're looking to add an outfield bat for sure.
I think everyone, when they think about the Pittsburgh Pirates, they all know about Paul Skenes, right? The word is out. He started the All-Star game for the National League. He has a sub-2 ERA. Has been absolutely ridiculous this season. We'll talk more about him in a second. But what outside of Paul Skenes has worked for the Pirates this year and allowed them to be in position to maybe buy at the trade deadline?
Pitching. It's not just Paul Skenes. A guy that is on the IL right now, Jared Jones, who he probably would have been in the Rookie of the Year conversation had his own teammate not come up and just stole the show for all of baseball, really. But Jared Jones has been good. He'll be back probably 3 weeks from now, if I had to guess. He's been a great. Mitch Keller, a guy that they extended to a $77 million deal during spring training, has been exactly who they would have hoped for him to be. We'll see him, I believe, Sunday here in Arizona. And another guy that has really come on is the guy pitching Friday for the Pirates. It's Luis Ortiz. He was a former big-time prospect for them, did not pitch well at all last year. I feel like a lot of people wrote him off. He started this season in the bullpen, and they really built him up into being a starter. He started off just being a guy that would come in to eat innings in a blowout, and then as the year progressed, they started using him as the bulk guy in bullpen games, and he's been a starter over the last, I would say, month or so, and he has a sub-1 ERA as a starter. And it's in a small sample size. I believe it's only 4 starts so far, but the guy's been really good, and this is another elite prospect that looks to be panning out. He's only 25 years old. So starting pitching's been really good. The bullpen took a couple of months to come into form based off of injuries and guys coming to have some slow starts, but their back end is really solid with Bednar, a 2-time All-Star, Aroldis Chapman, who, at this point in his career, you're going to get good and you're going to get bad. It's been a lot more good than bad lately. Colin Holderman has been a really, really solid eighth inning guy for them. And they've had two young right-handers who have been really good since June. Carmen Mlodzinski and Kyle Nicholas, two guys that I could see probably being future closers at one point in their career. Not anytime soon, just because of how many other late inning options the Pirates have. But they've got 5 high leverage arms in their bullpen to go along with probably 8 starters when everyone's healthy that could be in another postseason caliber team rotation. So the pitching's great. The rest of the team, offensively, not so great. So it's been a lot of one-run games, getting shut out or winning 1-0. I know they've had over 50 games where their pitcher has gone at least 6 innings. And I know they've lost at least 23, 24 of those. So,
Wow.
I mean, this is a team that probably should be in first place if they just had a league average offense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this weekend it's going to be maybe even more of a challenge. I know I saw Brian Reynolds is on the bereavement list, which I think holds him out at least until Sunday. Maybe he's able to get back. Certainly, best thoughts and wishes with him for sure. But yeah, I mean, without him, I mean, the offense for the Pirates, I guess O'Neal Cruz I feel like I see in my timeline every few days O'Neal Cruz hitting a baseball like 124 miles an hour off the bat. But then you go check his stats and they're fine. They're solid, but they're, maybe not well above average. Andrew McCutchen, I know, is, back with the Pirates and had a pretty decent season. Offensively, is there anyone outside of those two guys that kind of brings any kind of thump to this lineup?
Rowdy Tellez has been very good since June. He was offensively the worst player in the National League the first 2 months of the season. His WAR was second worst in baseball, and I believe his weighted runs created plus was second worst in baseball. But since June, I think the only 2 first basemen in the National League who have been better offensively are Freeman and Harper. So, I mean, he's been a big-time difference maker, especially against right-handers, although Wednesday he had 2 big hits against left-hander that helped them win the game against the Cardinals. So Tellez is a guy to look out for. Nick Gonzalez is a scrappy rookie second baseman. Probably shouldn't be hitting cleanup. He's their cleanup hitter right now. And he brings just a different look to this team. This is a very passive team at the plate. They watch a lot of pitches. Nick Gonzalez is different. He's a first pitch swinger. He's come up with a couple of clutch hits. He has team best 8 game-winning runs batted in this year. He's a guy that I think would, for a true playoff team, would be like a solid 6th, 7th hitter. But they have him batting 4th right now. So Tellez and Nick Gonzalez are 2 guys to watch out for. And just to talk a little bit more about Cruz, just a very interesting player. This guy probably has more God-given ability than maybe anyone in baseball, aside from, a select handful or maybe 5 or 6 guys you could put ahead of him. But just the arm, the speed, the power, like you pointed out, the exit velocity. He has 3 of the 5 hardest hit baseballs in the season. But he's still going through some growing pains. This is a guy who lost a whole year of minor league development because of the pandemic, and he broke his ankle on April 9th last year. And so this is his first full big league season. Pirate fans are frustrated because we've been hearing about how this guy was supposed to be the superstar of this generation, this wave of talent. And he hasn't necessarily become that yet, but he has immensely improved as the year's gone on. He made 10 errors in the first 2 months of the season. He's made 4 since June 1st. He's hitting .333 against lefties this year, 330 against this month, I should say. Prior to this month, he was batting like 114 against lefties, but he's taking a lot of strides toward hitting them better, a lot of power against lefties too, 5 extra base hits against lefties this month. So those are steps he needs to take to be the superstar they need him to be. And him and Reynolds are really going to have to carry the offense, regardless of what move they make at the deadline. Those are going to be typically a team that goes on a playoff run built like the Pirates. It's a pitching heavy team. You need 2 offensive superstars, and then the rest of the team kind of needs to be league average. It's going to have to be Reynolds and Cruz. And without Reynolds, Cruz has to have a huge series this weekend in Arizona.
How do you capture just what Paul Skenes has been? I know the Diamondbacks are not going to see him in this series. They probably will next weekend when they go to Pittsburgh. But how do you capture what he's done so far in his rookie year?
It's It's almost like nothing impresses us anymore. I mean, and it all, not to say that it does, like it does, like, but I remember watching him in Milwaukee, that start right before the All-Star game where he threw 7 no-hit innings and he got pulled and everyone got all upset about it. That was one where like 3 or 4 innings in, I looked at like other beat writers who are in Milwaukee and I was like, he doesn't look as good as he has prior. Like I was like, oh, he doesn't have his best stuff today. And then like the dude ends up going 7 no-hit innings. And it's just that kind of, the bar for him is so high. And originally I was kind of waiting for him to be humbled. And I don't know if that moment's going to come. And that's not to say, I mean, he's going to lose games. He just lost his first big league start last week or earlier this week. And it was a game where he threw 8 1/3 innings. So, I mean, yeah, he didn't really deserve to lose that game. But he's just an elite talent. I would be shocked if this guy does not end up being the best pitcher of the 2020s. Like it's crazy to say that. He's only pitched, I believe, 13 times in the big leagues.
Yeah.
But he's just unlike anything I've seen. He's that good.
Yeah, I don't think that's outrageous to say at all. It feels crazy after 13 starts, but it really isn't. Looking at the pitching matchups for this series, and I know you mentioned it earlier, we have Luis Ortiz going tonight against Zach Gallen on the Diamondbacks side, although the D-backs have not officially announced their starters for the weekend. But we think it's going to be Gallen tonight, Brandon Pfaadt on Saturday, and then young right-hander Gilbert Diaz on Sunday. I know you touched on Mitch Keller pitching in that Sunday game and Ortiz pitching tonight. Marco Gonzalez, I believe, is slated to start for the Pirates on Saturday. I know he's a guy who's kind of been around for a while and seems to have put up some pretty good numbers for the Pirates this year.
Yeah, very interesting player. A guy who went on the IL in early April, just 3 starts into his season. He didn't return until the final series prior to the All-Star break. So he's only pitched twice since returning from the IL. He threw 5 shutout innings, or 5, I believe, 1-run innings of baseball against the White Sox, which, I mean, take that for what you will. And then he threw 4 2/3 against the Phillies on Sunday, which, I mean, they're still building this guy up, to be frank. I mean, he threw, I think it was like 87 pitches Sunday. So, I mean, that's got to be his highest pitch count he's had since probably all season. So, I mean, this is a guy who I wouldn't be shocked to see dealt in the next week. If they are looking to maybe make a deal similar to what the Orioles just did with the Phillies, between 2 teams contending, if a team's looking for a 5th starter, Gonzalez is probably a player the Pirates would be willing to part ways with, just because they have Jones and Falter, who will both be back off the IL in like the next 2-3 weeks. But right now, I mean, he's a guy that's probably, your goal with Marco is to get you through 5 innings. And when you look at what Ortiz and Keller have done recently, both of those guys are going to give you 6, if not 7 or 8. So Saturday is going to be a day where their bullpen is probably expected to do a little bit more work compared to the other 2 days. But I mean, Gonzalez has a really good off-speed pitch. His changeup's probably his best thing he goes with. I mean, he's a veteran lefty. Those guys, they stick around in baseball for a while. They know how to get outs. He's not going to have the lethal stuff that the rest of this rotation has, but I don't think he wins you a game. I don't think he loses you a game, if that makes sense. I'd be willing to make a large bet that the game is within reach upon his exit. So that's the best way to summarize Marco Gonzalez.
Last thing here for Noah, when I think about the Pirates potentially in a playoff series, like I think about a 5-game series where your game 1, 2, and 3 starters are Skenes and Jared Jones and Mitch Keller, and I think that's about as good of a top 3 in a rotation as you'll find in baseball. I mean, from that standpoint, it feels like maybe the Pirates should be pretty aggressive. I mean, I guess this window is kind of just opening for them, but with pitchers, you never know when Paul Skenes' elbow is going to fall off, right? Like, this is just the reality of the game. It feels like maybe they should push the chips in right now.
A lot of people feel that way. I mean, this is a team where, like you said, if they get in, it's probably going to be because of a wild card spot, and best of 3 series against those 3 arms. I don't know who. Maybe the Phillies.
Yeah.
I mean, I find me a better rotation. And that's not to say, because I mean, a lot of those guys, if you look at the games they've lost, Keller, Jones, Skenes, they did their part, but the offense doesn't score. And I think that's been the reluctance to go all in. I don't
Sure.
think the front office believes there's a player available within, what they're willing to give up prospect wise or take on salary wise that will make this a legitimate World Series threat. If there was that one guy that you could
Hmm.
go out and get, they would probably be willing to do it. I would expect them to probably be very aggressive this offseason because that way they have a larger player pool to go after. They have so many other pitchers they can deal to get some offense. They definitely need to add offense, but yeah, it would make sense in one theory because they're going to be in every game they play from now until whenever their season ends. And in October, you need to do two things. You need to have good pitching and you need to hit home runs. They have the first part of that down really well. The second part of it, not very good at all. So I don't know what they do. Making an aggressive push would certainly be something that made fans happy. But like you said, the window's just opening and there are more arms on the way. So, I mean, this rotation might be better next year than it is this year. But again, that's not a guarantee. Someone's going to get hurt. Multiple people probably will
Sure.
get hurt. Some guys are going to regress. So, I would certainly like to see it as a guy who covers the team. It would be a lot of fun to see them make a big move and go all in. But I don't know if this front office is willing to do that this season.
Well, no, we really appreciate the time. For those of you listening, watching, be sure to give him a follow on Twitter, _ Noah Hiles. That's Hiles over on Twitter. Does a fantastic job covering the Pirates over at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Noah, I guess I'll see you at the ballpark here in a few hours. Looking forward to seeing what happens this weekend. And thanks again for hopping on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.